Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. And today, listeners, I have another surprise guest. I'm thinking that, it's going to be good for the audience to listen to different people's perspectives around dating, relationships, love. And I feel that there's far more benefit to actually probably hearing some interviews and some discussion around subjects rather than just one person's angle. So today I've got Amanda Rose. She's the founder and CEO of the Dating Boutique and Prestige Connections. Welcome, Amanda.
Hi, Lyn. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. You're very welcome. So tell me a little bit about how you initially got to sort of get involved in the specific industry of love, dating and relationships. I think that'd be a good place for us to start and go with the discussion from there.
Okay, sure, absolutely. So I started in the dating industry in 2011, so 8 years ago. And how I got started was I turned my heartbreak into my business. And how I got started is I was looking for my husband at the time. I had suspicions that he was dating online while we were married. And I went looking for his profile online on the online dating sites, ended up finding it. But while I was looking for his profile, I came across just so many horrible dating profiles that I thought somebody should help these guys look dateable. There should be a business for this. And little did I know that I would take that little thought and turn it into an amazing company and matchmaking agency. So I started my first company, The Dating Stylist, and I made over online profiles for different online dating sites. From there, I was offered a job with an international matchmaking agency, but I did not like their process. It wasn't personalized enough. So I decided to branch off on my own and start my own matchmaking agency. So the divorce and the heartbreak actually turned into an amazing blessing, which I like to help others find, their true love too, and overcome any heartbreaks and date successfully like I had to do 9 years ago now. So that's how it all got started and how I got into this amazing industry.
Excellent. And isn't it wonderful that, how, somebody's severe and traumatic stressings can often turn around into the biggest blessing.
Yes, absolutely. And I believe that is so true. If we can turn I always tell my clients, we can turn our mess into like our message or an amazing life that we want to create if we choose to. So we don't have to let something destroy us, like a divorce or a heartbreak. We can turn that around into something absolutely amazing.
Well, that's brilliant. Well, one of the things that we had a little chat about off air before we actually got on to the main recording of this episode was you said recently you've been having a lot of discussions around how to attract the right person. Excuse me. So I would love you to share some tips with us about what you advise people in relation to how to attract the right person.
Yes, I love that subject because I think a lot of times singles just want to jump out there and start dating and get on online dating sites and not do the work behind attracting the right person. And if we don't do the work behind attracting the right person, we often get stuck in dating patterns that we continue to repeat that does not lead us to that lifelong healthy love. So to attract the right person, I think that we have to become the best version of ourselves. And when I say that, I feel like singles should work on, the inner stuff, follow their passions, their dreams, do all those things they love to become that person that not only they want to become, but they want to attract. So for example, I have a lot of clients say, well, they want someone that takes care of themselves or that's financially stable. Well, you have to be financially stable, and you have to take care of yourself too before you attract that person, because like attracts like. So that's a huge topic that I use to, especially with my coaching clients and my matchmaking clients, to really get them on the path of attracting those higher quality dates and finding that long-term healthy relationship.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. The thing is that, like you said, we have to do that inner work first as that foundation, as a bare minimum, don't we? Because, and I think part of that, is looking at activities that we enjoy doing, because it isn't about being reliant on whoever you want to attract. It's about being your own person and then being attracted to that, and then that particular person, if they come into your life, is the cherry on top of your already great cake of life that you're living.
Yes, exactly. I think that's so true. And I think sometimes, as a single person, we might think, well, this having my other half will make me whole, but we have to become whole before we get that other person, because it just creates a very good foundation for a healthy long-term relationship. And we're not seeking someone else to fulfill us. We're already fulfilled, and we meet that other fulfilled person, and the relationship that we can create is, amazing. It can be, mind-blowing.
Absolutely. I've always said a similar message around, if you really want a healthy, fulfilling relationship that's operating at its highest level, that's full of passion, full of intimacy, and full of deep love and attraction, then this foundation of making sure, you've done the inner work on yourself beforehand, in terms of, having routines in place that absolutely add to your well-being and your self-care and your own happy energy vibe that you're exuding, is going to be your best chance of attracting that great partner, regardless of whether you're male or female.
Yes, that's so true. I love that you said the routines too, because I encourage my clients to have routines every day and every week, especially, have that self-care routine every day. It might just be, working out for 30 minutes, or taking time to meditate, or just getting out in nature, or whatever you love to do. Maybe it's a hobby you love to do. Just taking that time to practice that self-care and self-love, because that will make a huge difference. And when just with your everyday activities and how you present yourself to people, you're in a better mood, which definitely can attract more people. So it has a rippling effect when you take care of yourself.
Absolutely. And another thing you touched on there was the big self-love question.
Yeah.
I think people, quite often struggle with that. They can sort of get to the point where they're happy to put a self-care routine in place and a living a happy life being single. But then when it comes to digging down deep, and you actually ask, specific questions about how they feel about themselves, you do see some people really get uncomfortable with that.
Oh, yes. It can be a tricky subject, and it is hard to really sit down and take all that in and kind of, dissect what we're feeling and maybe what we've done wrong in the past with our relationships. But yes, really getting deep into that can be difficult for my clients sometimes. So, but it's a process. I don't think people should be hard on themselves. Just do a little bit at a time to really understand, your feelings, and taking the time to take care of yourself. It makes a huge difference when we started, really being mindful about those things.
Yeah, and I think people are really hard on ourselves, especially women, I feel, because we've been, obviously subjected to a lot of, we should be looking like this in terms of size and shape and facial features, from, the media, that can really make us be very self-critical of ourselves. And you know what? I'm a big woman. I've attracted, a phenomenal relationship. It hasn't held me back in the slightest. It doesn't matter what your shape, what your size, what you look like. It really is about having that inner confidence, the energy you exude, and having, the appreciation of yourself, and being able to look in the mirror and think, you know what? You're an amazing, wonderful woman. That woman that's staring back at me.
Yes, that is so good. I love that you said that, because the thing is, a lot of people, they might go out with their girlfriends or friends, and they're maybe looking for, someone to, their soulmate. and they might be, they don't have that self-confidence that they're not the prettiest girl in the room, or, the most successful man, or whatever it may be. But the thing is, it's the people that have that high value characteristics about them are more attracted to the person that has that self-confidence, that has that inner glow, that, has a beautiful heart. I work with very successful, handsome, attractive men, and people assume that they want the gorgeous model. That's not the case. Almost probably 95% of the time, they want the woman of substance that has worked on herself, that shows that inner confidence, that just glows from the inside. That's the most important thing that they're looking for in a long-term relationship.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And I feel that, some advice that I give to my audience and clients is that, if you really find it difficult, due to past conditioning or whatever your experience has been, to actually look in the mirror and love yourself as a starting point, if that's a step too far, I always think, a good starting point would be to, look at the person in the mirror and remember them as the little girl or the little boy you once were. And surely you can love that little boy or little girl, and nurture and hug that little boy or little girl as a starting point.
Yes, I do. I love that. And it's something I teach you is to look in your eyes, or just look yourself in the eyes in the mirror and say affirmations like, I am beautiful, I am loved, I am an amazing person. And I think as the more we tell ourselves that, we start to reprogram those limiting beliefs that we've put on ourselves, maybe from past relationships or our childhood or whatever it may be. And we do start to love ourselves more when we can look at ourselves like as that child, or that young child, or as the person that we're standing in front of today. I think that makes a huge difference.
Definitely. I mean, I can remember even going through a phase where I did lose a lot of weight, and I had a fabulous figure, but I still looked at myself and was very critical. I was never satisfied with my size and shape, even when I was probably at my most ideal size and shape.
Yes, don't we all? I think we all do that at one point.
Yeah, and it's it is really about loving yourself for whatever you look like at this moment in time, regardless of your size, regardless of your shape, like you say, regardless of whether you feel successful or not. The thing is that there'll be some of your friends that feel that you're a lot more successful in areas of your life than what they are, and are full of admiration for that, and you're probably feeling jealous of them for having success in some areas of their life, and it's quite surprising, really, what success actually is perceived by different people when you speak to them.
Yes, that's so true. And absolutely, I think we all, we have to accept that we're all on our own journey. So our success is going to be different than the person next door, or our best friend, or our cousin, or whoever it may be. We have to focus on the growth that we're experiencing, and that as long as we're trying to become the best version of ourselves, I think that's successful. No matter where we are in life, we should always give ourselves room for grace too, because we're human. We're not, we have to let ourselves make mistakes and learn from them and move forward. That's one of the most important things to remember. If we're too hard on ourselves sometimes, it's just to give ourselves grace and keep moving forward.
Definitely. I think another area, Amanda, is, not being gracious enough to receive. Aren't we awful sometimes at receiving compliments, or want to bat them away, or return the favor, rather than just, plain and simply just gracefully saying, well, thank you, that's great, I love that.
Yes, I know. It's so hard sometimes as a woman too to accept compliments, and sometimes I think when someone, or before, like years ago, I would think, are they being genuine, or are they or are they just saying that? But now just take the compliment. And it is hard to take compliments sometimes, but we should just take that and be thankful and not question it.
Absolutely. I think quite often we're quite good at giving, and we feel good and fine about that, but actually accepting a compliment or a gift or receiving love sometimes can be and feel a stretch for some people, regardless of whether they're men or women. So I always feel it's quite good at some point to educate about, just be aware how you're receiving or not receiving, as the case may be.
Yes, that's so good. And I was reading something earlier about this, about how sometimes we don't feel like we're worthy of the best love. And then when it comes into our lives, we kind of question it, if it's, real, or if it's the person's intentions are true. I think we forget that we are worthy of these good things, worthy of someone loving us, worthy of someone complimenting us. And that can be hard for women sometimes, especially if we've been through bad relationships or hurt in the past. We are more likely not to accept that authentic love. We might question it instead of just embracing it.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. The next thing I'd like to talk to you about, Amanda, is what tips do you have for the listeners around flirting?
Oh, I love this topic because there's so much around flirting that we usually don't recognize or know about. Flirting is actually, there's personality types behind flirting. So there's different personality types of how we all flirt with people. And it's important to recognize those flirting personalities when you're out on a date or, you're out and about. But flirting is not always the traditional, batting your eyes or giggling at what someone says or the gentle touch. But it can be in other ways too. It's just how people respond and interact with others. And I think, so that's something to be mindful of. Someone might be flirting, but they might be more of an introvert and not be as open about the flirting. And that's okay. You can flirt that way too if it's your personality type. Another thing to be mindful about when flirting is your body language. And I see this, I love to just watch people when I'm out, but I can tell if a date is going well or if it's going really bad. They're not going to have another one. But body language is a huge flirting technique to build attraction and to get someone, to ask you out again or to ask you out for the first time. And you can just use body language. Some simple techniques on body language is, if you're having a conversation with someone, turn into them with your arms open, because when we open our arms, we look more inviting, we look more warm and friendly, and they're more likely to engage in conversation with us and want to engage more in conversation. So that's a huge one. Just don't cross your arms on a date, or don't look standoffish. Turn into that person. And a little rule of thumb is to have your belly button pointed towards them if you're interested in them. And if they're turned towards you, the same. If their legs are turned towards you, if you're sitting next to each other, that's a huge sign too. And of course you can do like the little gentle touch, on the arm, or kind of, touch your neck. Women tend to touch their neck when they're attracted to somebody. But those are just all little signs that you're attracted. And the other person might not even catch onto it, but it's sending them those signals that I'm attracted to you. I'm inviting you to, talk to me more, ask me out again. So it's just about being mindful when you're out on a date or you're out with your girlfriends, so that you look open and inviting to continue a conversation.
Yeah, like you say, it's the non-verbal gestures and body language and communication that are sending all the signals most of the time that we're not in there.
Yes, it is. And it's crazy. I think it's only like 7% of your verbal communication is actually considered flirting and actually builds attraction. It's the other percentage that builds attraction, like the tone of your voice or your body language. So, and how you respond to them and interact, that actually builds more attraction levels.
Would you have any tips, Amanda, around, how, if you're a woman, would you let a bloke know that you're interested without sort of being too forward? In other words, I call it, like they did in the old days where you dropped your handkerchief sort of situation.
Yeah. Or just, throwing yourself on them or being too over the top. Yeah. So I think the most important thing you can do when you're out just to show interest is to be friendly and to smile. If you see, that cute guy across the bar, I think the important thing is to smile, maybe say hi, and just, start a small conversation if you can. And it doesn't have to be anything extravagant. It can be, hi, how's your night going? Something like that. It doesn't have to be over the top, and just get that small conversation going. So I think that's one of the best flirting techniques to get someone's attention, without throwing yourself on them or dropping your handkerchief. But just letting them know that you are approachable. I think that's huge. And I know a lot of women go out in groups to, they go out for the night in a group, or they go out to a restaurant in a group. Well, men are intimidated by approaching women in groups because there's so many of you. So
yes.
I encourage people to date themselves, go out and take yourself out to dinner, or, go out and grab a glass of wine or whatever it may be, because you're more likely to get approached in that setting.
Yeah, actually, that's something I hadn't thought about until you just mentioned it, that, men can be, I'm sure, very intimidated by, the bigger the group, the more intimidated they're likely to be, and probably the more drinks that probably need to neck down themselves courage, before they've plucked up the courage. And then they come across like a drunken slob instead of...
Right. And they totally messed up the whole point of what they wanted to do or intended to do. That is so true. Yeah, I think it is. It's hard for men do get intimidated by, when to approach a woman. Some women think, well, they should approach me. Well, sometimes they're just as scared as you are. So we have to, give them some slack and kind of make it a environment for them to approach us in an appropriate way.
Yeah, we've got to make it safe for them, by making it, like you say, a conducive environment for them to feel comfortable to approach. Because I'm sure, it's a lot tougher for men because, I suppose they have to sort of more or less gear themselves up for the possibility of rejection every time they approach a woman, don't they?
Yes, and they have been rejected way more than we have usually.
Yes.
They are the ones that usually make that first move. So it is hard for them, especially if they've been rejected multiple times and they've just given up. We have to make it where they feel like it's safe to approach us. And that can be as simple as saying hi or smiling at him. That can open up a whole conversation.
Most definitely. Okay, so what would your tips be about how to actually date successfully once you've got him interested, so to speak, or her interested?
I think there's all kinds of things we can do to date successfully. The number one thing is, like we talked about before, is that self-love, of becoming the best version of ourselves, and to make sure that we're not bringing any past dating blocks or baggage into the new relationship. I see that sabotage so many relationships, especially new ones, because we'll have things that trigger us. If he doesn't respond right away, or if he maybe he said something, just like a past relationship, we have to make sure that we have healed ourselves from any past baggage. And I know that can be very hard sometimes, but it's important that we are mindful about that before we start dating or as we're dating someone, because we don't want to sabotage a new relationship over past triggers or past relationships or dating blocks. Another way to date successfully, I think, is to open up your wants and your needs in a relationship. And I'm not saying don't make deal breaker or don't sacrifice what you need in a relationship, like the characteristics and the values, all the important things. But sometimes people come to me and they want someone who's exactly, 6 foot with dark hair and, is a doctor and, all these other requirements. And the thing is, sometimes our soulmate shows up in a different package, but
yes.
we have moved along and just completely not even paid attention to that soulmate that could have been an amazing relationship, but we were so focused on how the package was presented that we just walked away. So I encourage people just to open that up. He could have blonde hair instead of dark hair, or he could be 5'10" instead of, 6 foot. So just open those possibilities up some more. Another thing I see is people tend to date within a certain, demographic. For example, I live near a major city and people like to date within a 10-mile radius. Well, if they just open that up just a little bit,
yes.
open up a whole new dating pool. And I can never wrap my head around why they won't open that up just a little bit more because they're not finding who they want where they are. And that can create dating success too. Some other things when you're on the date is just to be engaged, be more interested in that person than being focused on how interesting you are, because we make more connections when we're more interested in engaging and ask questions about the other person. We're wanting to learn more about them, and that builds instant connection. So I think that's a huge thing. Sometimes people kind of skip out on when they're dating. They want to present the best versions of themselves. Of course we do, but then we forget to really find out about the other person. And
I agree. Yeah, I think it's very important to, think about how much you're listening compared to how much you're talking. Mm-hmm. We've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And I think a lot of times people forget to, when they're sitting there, I'll just tell my clients, when you go on the date, think about what is great about this person instead of focusing on what can you find wrong about the person. Focus on what is great. And if you have that mindset when you're going in, it immediately switches your energy, and the person can feel it and feel more comfortable that you're not, picking them apart. You're not asking questions to kind of try to dig in to see what the red flags are, but you're instead just seeing what this person is all about, what's great about them. So I love when I always tell my clients to go in with that mindset when they go on any date. It might be the first date, the 5th date, or you might be dating for a year. Mm-hmm. Still focus on what is great about my partner or my date.
Absolutely. I think that's a really wonderful tip. Yeah, to go in with that mindset about, what is wonderful about this person. Mm. I think especially for women, because I think, initially I think it's fair to say as a generalization, men are more visually focused. But for women, I think we're not so necessarily bogged down on what guys look like. Usually we're just attracted to a man's confidence and the way he makes us feel. So giving him the opportunity, regardless, like you say, of what package is presented to us and what form he looks like, to actually sit and listen and, actually get in touch with how we feel whilst he's speaking is a great indicator for women as to, where this relationship might go.
Yes, exactly. Because we need to focus on, does he have the characteristics to create that long-term healthy relationship, or does he have the characteristics of someone I would want to spend my life with? I think those are the things we should focus on more to really get to know someone before, writing them off and never dating them again.
I think it's interesting as well, you touched on baggage. I mean, what's the most common baggage do you think people come with when they're going, or contemplating going back into the dating scene again?
I think the most common baggage I see is definitely they have been hurt by a past relationship, and it's usually infidelity, or I would say it's usually infidelity, actually. The more that for the majority of the people, my clients and my coaching clients. And that's a really hard subject to heal from. I've been there, so I know how hard it can be. But we have to remember that the person that's sitting across from us today on the new date, or the person we've been dating for a while now, is not our past relationship. It's a whole new person with a whole new, set of characteristics and values, and they're responding to us different. So I think that's probably the number one baggage I see being brought on dates. They start to compare their past relationship with the new one. They might not even trust completely because of the old relationship. So they're kind of punishing the new date from their past relationships mistakes.
Yeah, I agree with that. And another common one I hear is that, all men just want to date, unintelligent airheads, so to speak.
I've heard that too.
When you're a professional woman and you want to attract, that very healthy, masculine male man, quite often, I hear the baggage is around, oh, well, men aren't interested in successful women. Well, actually, yes, they are.
Right. Exactly. And the thing is, they might be interested in the kind of airheadish for a minute, but that's usually not who they want to settle down with for the rest of their lives. So they are more attracted, I think, to people that are self-confident and that have their life together. That's a huge attraction factor. Someone they don't have to, take care of, so to speak, but someone who has their, emotional, mental, financial life together. That is way more attractive than someone who does not.
Exactly. And I think it's very, a really good idea to sort of reinforce that, if you are going into a dating environment with the thoughts, all men are cheats, or they're only attracted to women who are dumb or airheads or whatever term you want to use, then you're almost setting yourself up for that to be a self-fulfilling prophecy just based on your own mindset.
Yes, I love that. Yes, I think that is so true, because when we expect that, we receive it. But when we expect to date amazing, higher quality dates that have great values and characteristics, then we're setting up those boundaries ahead of time, and we tend to attract those people into our life. But when we have that better mindset, because we like attracts like. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your insights around, finding the right person, the way to flirt, and dating successfully, Amanda. I've really appreciated and enjoyed our conversation around that. And so I'm hoping the listeners got some great insights as well.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation.
My pleasure. Would you please share the name of your organisation again for the benefit of the listeners, and also your contact information? I will make sure that is included in the show notes anyway, but if you could just, for the benefit of anybody who's just listening now, say what your contact information is and the name of your company, that'd be great.
Sure. So my matchmaking agency is Prestige Connections, and then I also own a dating consultancy agency, Dating Boutique. You can find all of that company information on prestigeconnections.us or datingboutiqueinc.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that, Amanda. I'll make sure that, as I say, that information is in the show notes. And that's going to be it for this episode of the Hearts Entwined podcast. So thank you so much again, Amanda, for your insights around dating and relationships. And until next time, always remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.